to the Allied republics. The state of war had suspended by the fact all exercise of national authority in the Italian republics. Our generals commanded exclusively at Genoa and Milan and in the Roman states. The existence of these republics was again brought in question. Switzerland, endowed with more ancient strength and an independence which she had known how to defend till that epoch, kept herself in the position in which our last treaty of alliance had placed her in face of us. She earned 18,000 men who were to join our troops. Holland had new dissensions to combat. Brabant's own auxiliaries, united with Dutch officers who had emigrated, entered the Batavian territory. The anarchical party who had sent for them had framed a plot to overturn the government. The chiefs were arrested. It was to the French Directory that the Batavian Directory owed the discovery of this conspiracy. The Anglo-Russian fleet, which cruised along the coast, was probably not a stranger to these movements. 3. The armies. The army of Championnet re-entered in triumph at Rome and left it immediately to take possession of the King of Naples. It was but a military march. From the deck of his vessel, the fugitive monarch could see our colors peacefully received in his beautiful capital. Leghorn, scarcely invaded by his troops, was evacuated immediately in haste. The army of Joubert took possession of all Piedmont without obstacle. They organized a provisionary government at Turin, and also after the departure of the king for Sardinia, the Piedmontese troops entered into the service of France. The army of Massena was posted upon the Mont Saint Gothard and St. Bernard, and its communications with the army of Turin were assured. The news from Egypt was always favorable. We heard of the revolt at Cairo that was so quickly appeased, and the successive defeats of the Mamelukes, and the preparations of Napoleon for the invasion of Syria. For the interior, we were alarmed with regard to the ancient Vendée. The Directory was called upon to know what extraordinary measures would be required in those departments. They replied that the existing laws were sufficient. This confidence reassured the councils. Belgium gave more uneasiness at that time to the Directory than La Vendée. 2 serious battles had taken place in the environs of Antwerp and Enghien, in which several hundreds of rebels and soldiers had fallen. Some few days after, Louvain beheld a more serious combat. Brussels was put in a state of siege, and the calm was not established without shedding a great deal of French blood. Many persons thought in the legislative body that these deplorable struggles could only be attributed to the persecution exercised against the priests. Others, on the contrary, pretended that the persecution was not sufficiently rigorous, and the proposition of Briot against the transported priests was submitted to discussion. Violence thought to drag weakness after it, but the discussion was not more decisive than it had been in the preceding month, and the new adjournment, without any fixed term, was pronounced. Briot was not discouraged. He had several times attacked the elections of the judges chosen by the people in the years 4 and 5. He recommenced his attack. Our tribunals, according to him, were composed of royalists. The revision of all the judiciary choices appeared to him to be urgent. The sitting was stormy, and some votes only decided that they should not attempt to touch the independence of justice. I voted against Briot, but I continued to keep silence. I felt that we ought to support the government, which was menaced in the interior and the exterior, and on the other side I felt the repugnance of granting an extraordinary power to persons who served so ill those powers which they had already received. Several of my colleagues, uncertain as well as myself how to act, showed themselves more rarely at the tribune. We waited impatiently the epoch that was fixed for replacing one of the 5 directors whom chance obliged each year to quit the Directory. We purposed naming Siaz, and we trusted that he would give to the executive power more wisdom and stability. Our political conscience was put to the test in the capital question of the liberty of the press, which they discussed about the end of the month several times. They wanted to put to the order of the day the penal law proposed by the commission, of which I formed a part, with a view of destroying the dictatorship of the police upon the newspapers. I had taken an active part in this project of law, but how refuse the evidence, how repulse the demands of the directorials? Could the Royalist and Jacobin journals recommence their diatribes against the government in the midst of the war and the insurrection of Belgium? For my part, I thought it right to yield, and I voted for the adjournment of our project of the penal law. The ancient republics in the time of great danger did not content themselves with partial measures of dictatorship. They resigned themselves to the dictatorship of a single man. Caveat consuls ne Republica detrimentum capii. We abandoned to the government till the end of the year the censure of the journals.